Hello everybody and welcome to Dungeons & Drams. Today we're going to be talking about dragons. Dragons are some of the coolest things that we could possibly put in our game. So to not think through everything about this dragon and rely on improvisation is likely not to produce as cool of a result as we can using AI. Let's go to ChatGPT. We're going to start off here with a more complex initial prompt than we're used to, but this will allow for a lot more deviation or creativity on the part of ChatGPT if you don't feel like filling in any of these fields. So let's try to go right through this. So I'm a dungeon master playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I want to create a dragon for my game. I may define some or all of the following aspects. This lets it know that it doesn't need everything, but that you expect it in return. Now, the first and foremost is name, because coming up with names of dragons can be tough. And you can also, once it's created this, you could also say, I don't like that name, give me 10 more. That's super easy. We're not even going to go through that here unless I don't like the name it comes back with. But just know that that's a very easy thing to do, and we've been over that in some of the previous videos. Age category, wyrmling, young, adult, or ancient, easy. Dragon types, red, blue, green, etc., etc. I go through chromatic, metallic, and gem dragons here. Alignment, size, personality, the size being like small, medium, large, etc., etc. It will use what you give it for the age to infer what it should be. But if for some reason you want a gargantuan, if you want an ancient dragon that is somehow not gargantuan because somehow that fits with your story, then you could easily override it here. And that will matter when it's coming into the stat block too. It will add, like if you say I want an ancient dragon that's small, it will change that in the stat block that you'll see in a minute. Alignment, obvious, size, personality. If there's any personality quirks that you really want this dragon to have, this is where you should override it. Abilities and powers. If there's a breath weapon that you really want, something like that, that's a good place to put it. Hit points and armor class. Let's say you want it to have 500 hit points. Override for this. Treasure. Now, this is where if you have a MacGuffin that this dragon should be hoarding or whatever, that's where you would add it. But you could also say, you know, they have the lost staff of Wizard Man, but also should have a typical dragon hoard, is what you could put something like that. Background. This would be any sort of history about this dragon that you want to make sure comes out. If it's an ancient dragon, it's been involved in battles. It's probably been involved in politics. And if you don't add this, I'll show you how to have it create some, which is actually a really cool feature. Lair. Pretty obvious. If you want something specific for its lair, or even want to define what its lair should look like, then we'll also have it create a lair for it, which we'll do later in the episode. I'm actually really excited for that part. That's very cool. Connection to the story. Obvious, but very important. Or if there's no connection, just say there's no connection. They just see it off the bow of their skyship or something like that. Stat block, obvious. Do you understand? Now, asking if it understands is going to tell it that you don't want it to generate one immediately. You just want it to know if it understands your prompt. ChatGPT, in usual fashion, is a little long-winded with its response, but that's totally fine. So basically it says yes. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with something obvious that we should all be able to kind of picture here. For example, I'd like to create an ancient blue dragon who is evil and gargantuan. Now this, I'm going to have it kind of do this while I talk to you. So the ancient blue dragon, I mean, we can all picture what an ancient blue dragon would be like, some of its mannerisms. It's going to use lightning, and just whatever else. So we can verify that what we're coming back from ChatGPT is going to be along the lines of what we want. Now, I've been making these videos for a while here, and the amount of things that ChatGPT assumes that are not necessarily true are getting less frequent, but they are still a concern. So it's important to verify the results before you put out a video like this, giving an initial prompt that you want people to be able to use. So as always, you can also find all of these prompts in the description below, so you don't have to try to pause it and type out whatever I'm doing. You just copy and paste. And just like that, we have Azuril the Thunder Tyrant, which is a pretty good name. I don't know that I like Azuril or Azuril. I feel like I'd change that a little bit just to be easier to pronounce, but maybe that's just me. All right, so it's an ancient blue dragon, it's lawful evil, and it's gargantuan, so it took into account everything that we told it. Cool. Its personality. It's cunning, tyrannical, and fiercely territorial. He sees other beings as either tools to be used or threats to be eliminated. He enjoys collecting information and has a network of spies among the humanoid population. All right, so all of that tracks, which is great. Its abilities and powers, it's got lightning breath, electromagnetic pulse, which disable electronics in a wide area, causing chaos among technologically reliant foes. So whether that is applicable in your world or not is important to consider, but I might, you know, consider this thing has some sort of power that nobody understands because we don't have technology in this world, or maybe like the gnomes or the dwarves or whatever are creating these mechanical things, but they don't run on electronics. So maybe you'll have to figure out how this works. Storm manipulation, can summon and control storms. That's cool. Frightful presence, instills fear. Okay, so we all understand that. Its hit points are 481. It's got a 22 AC. All right, it's treasure. It's amassed a vast treasure over the centuries, including ancient artifacts, vast wealth, and magical items of great power. That's a little easy. Like, that would be every single dragon, right? But we can ask it to expand upon some of the items in its treasure hoard as well. I do want you to know, this isn't just another creation of a monster video. I'm going to expand a lot of these aspects so that you can see how you can flesh this out in a matter of minutes. All right, background. Once a guardian of sacred desert temples, Azrael fell into darkness after being corrupted by a dark sorcerer. He now rules a vast desert and terrorizes nearby civilizations. So that's interesting. This blue dragon, I mean, blue dragons aren't known to be like overly aggressive, at least if my memory serves. So it does make some sense that although it would be kind of a territorial creature, it's not necessarily evil, but this is how it got evil. So that's cool. And you could ask it for some detail about that dark sorcerer. Who was it? How did it happen? His lair is an ancient sunken temple in the heart of the desert, protected by storms and loyal desert creatures. This temple is laden with traps and is said to hold ancient relics of great power. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to go through his lair. We're actually going to ask this to define and kind of map out his lair. It's going to be very cool. Connection to the story. Its actions are causing a massive drought affecting nearby regions, blah, blah, blah. Characters have to go kill it. All right, stat block. You can use a stat block for an ancient blue dragon from the monster manual as a base and adjust as needed. I want to know what's in his treasure hoard. What items are in Azrael's treasure hoard? Let's say what specific items are in Azrael's treasure hoard? Question mark. Can you generate me a roll table of items that the adventurers could find if they were to defeat him? So now we have a D20 roll table with a whole bunch of items that could be in the hoard. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but you can see here it's a number of magical items, but there's also things like gold coins. Obviously, we could ask it how many, but one thing I saw that was cool is there were Electrum coins with Azrael's likeness, which are rare collectible coins minted by Azrael's minions, valuable to collectors. So very cool. I could obviously expand upon this. I'm not going to spend time doing that, but you could see how easy it would be. All right, the next thing that we want to define here, and I'm going to hold off on the layer for a moment, because I want to know a little bit more about its background. Can you describe some events in history that Azrael was involved in? This is going to depend upon your own world. If you're running something like Forgotten Realms, there's a lot of history there anyway, but you could always make yours up. Just replace certain names of cities or whatever. If you're running a campaign in your own homebrew world, there's nothing saying that some of these cities couldn't have existed in the past and just not been there anymore. But if it says something like, oh, you know, this desert thing, which I was just kind of reading, there was a city on the outskirts that was named something. Now you have a name for your city that doesn't even need to exist anymore, or you could just come up with a new name. It's completely up to you, of course. It just does some of the work for you. So I'm not going to read through all of these. You guys can read them if you'd like to, but the Fall of the Desert Temples, once a guardian, it mentioned about his early life. He was a guardian of desert temples. His fall into darkness began when he was corrupted by a nefarious sorcerer. The temples he once protected were plundered and fell into ruin, marking a dark period in the region's history. Okay, and we could obviously ask it for more detail about that. Then basically he made a whole bunch of storms. There was a rebellion of the sand, the binding pact, blah, 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 blah. There's 7 different things here that I could expound upon and come up with a whole history that will help me to make a history of that whole region. Like, this is awesome. This is really, really cool. The arrival of the Dark Sorcerer, the pivotal moment where the Dark Sorcerer arrived, corrupting Azrael and turning him from a guardian to a tyrant. This event drastically changed the region's history, turning Azrael into a force of evil. Okay, cool. Now, one thing I didn't put in the initial prompt was a description of the dragon, which we can ask for. And, you know, even going back, I'll change this in the description down below. I don't want to like restart. I would put description. Now, we all can picture what a blue dragon looks like if we've ever looked at the monster manual, but that doesn't mean that there aren't little things that make it special, right? Or you could also say, well, instead of, you know how the blue dragons kind of have like those really stumpy horns, maybe you want really big horns or way more spikes or something like that. You could put that into that initial prompt, or you could just ask for a description. All right, now let's go into the lair. because I think a lair is super important, right? But I don't want to just know about the lair, although we're going to start there. I'm just going to say, can you describe to me what Azrael's lair looks like? Now, we know it's a sunken temple beneath the sand. So that's, or at least I believe that's what it said. So now we've gone ahead and created a lair here. So it talks about the location, what it looks like from the outside. It talks about the entrance, the interior, the central chamber, treasure vault, underground tunnels, observation spires, traps, and defenses. Now, here's what's important. It does mention that there are traps and defenses, but I want even more because I'm doing this last minute. I have a game in 2 hours and I really want to run my players through Azrael's lair. So I need everything. So let's prompt it. I would like to run my adventurers through Azrael's lair. Could you map out the location for me, describing how the various rooms connect to each other? Tell me about any traps, dangers, hazards, riddles, or anything else that I would need as the dungeon master to run my players through this lair. Now, I'm also going to add monsters in here as well. Let's see what we came up with. So we have the map layout. We have the entrance hallway, so it gives a little description. As adventurers enter, they find themselves in a long, dark hallway with ancient ruins and electric arcs crackling across the walls. That sounds pretty cool. I'm sure that you could ask it for a more in-depth, like, give me a description as if I was reading this to the players, something like that. It has a trap, electric floor panels that activate when stepped on, requiring careful observation or disabling. That makes a lot of sense. You know, you're going to keep anybody out unless they kind of know how to avoid these. Guardian chamber, a large chamber housing desert creatures under Azrael's control. Desert themed monsters like giant scorpions or sand elementals. Okay, so it gives a couple of options for things to put in that room too. Then you have the rune puzzle room, a room with a massive door locked by a rune puzzle related to the history and lightning theme. Solving the rune puzzle to access deeper chamber. Okay, so you could ask it to define what that puzzle actually is, and I did that in a previous video as well. You can check it out up there. The lightning gauntlet is the next room. A narrow corridor filled with lightning traps. That sounds awful. Lightning arc traps that shoot arcs of electricity across the corridor. Okay, so maybe you have to time things properly, or maybe take one of those scorpions from before and kind of like hurl it down to see what happens. It's hard not to want to just play, right? Then the relic room, a room filled with ancient relics, some of which are cursed or trapped. Oof, this place is dangerous, but I guess it's an ancient dragon. And the observation spires, accessible via hidden stairways. These spires provide a vantage point and a potential place for a mini-boss fight. Cool. Winged desert creatures or Lieutenant of Azrael. The central chamber. Okay, so now the treasure vault, underground tunnels, and the dark altar. But then it also gives you things as the DM to note. So environmental hazards are important, layer actions, riddles and lore, so blah, 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 blah. And you could expand, of course, on any one of these. Again, I've done a video on how to generate a dungeon, so you can check that out up there as well. It's nice how all these videos are kind of like feeding off of each other now. I'm happy with that. All right, so I want to know a little bit more. Let's get the stat block for Azrael. I'm not sure why it changed the format of the stat block, but that's fine. We can read it anyway. So we're not going to go through all of this, but as you see, it's got 22 AC, 481, the usual speed, burrow, fly. Let's see what's interesting about this. So damage immunity is lightning. I would sure hope so. All right, so it's got frightful presence. Now, all of this, I don't know why it formatted this way. It's a little tough, but it does have a multi-attack for its bite, claw, tail. So all of this is what we expect. The electromagnetic pulse. So it's a 60-foot radius. All electronic devices in the area are disabled for 1 minute. So again, only matters if you have electronic devices in your game. And storm manipulation. So this is a little bit uninteresting to me. I mean, all of it is what you would expect from a blue dragon, but I didn't give it anything that it should do. I didn't say, oh, you should definitely have this cool lightning breath that's somehow different, maybe do like a ball lightning or something. So it just spit out a blue dragon stat block, but it's also an ancient blue dragon, so it's gonna kick some butt anyway. All right. So you could adjust this any way that you want, but it's easy enough to get a stat block too. Keep in mind, we're doing this to try to be fast. I'm going to try something that I don't know if it's going to work. Could you generate a description that I could use in an AI image generator to make an image of Azrael? Now, obviously I'm thinking Midjourney. However, I tried this a second ago and it misunderstood what the word Midjourney is to actually be like, oh, well, here's a description that you could read to your adventurers Midjourney. So here's 4 different options that it gave me. They were okay. They certainly would get the point across. I think only the top right one really is a D&D blue dragon. But honestly, I would use any one of these pictures and I think it would get the point across. So Yeah, that's how you create a dragon. I'm not going to go through and create like a bronze dragon and a amethyst dragon. I actually did, however, create an amethyst dragon, and what it did was it was very cool. It talked about all of these things throughout history where it was acting as a neutral party that just understood the planes. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to try to build a story off of. So something you might want to consider is while you are generating your world, you may actually want to take some time to generate some dragons during the course of your world building, because they are going to affect the world at large, especially the ancients. So something to consider. You might not want to hold this off until the players need to fight a dragon. Do this early on and see where your world goes. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me here on Dungeons and Drams. I think next time I'm going to do an episode using Midjourney on how to generate images of dragons for your world, because I want to stick with dragons for a little bit. All right, thank you all very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Cheers.